It is a crazy time of war as the United States and Israel continues to attack and try to destroy the Iranian regime and its ability to fire ballistic missiles, suicide drones, and project terror and tyranny against Israel, against obviously U.S. interests and allies, and against our Arab allies here in the Middle East. So that war continues. But in the midst of this, this is Holy Week. We 2.6 billion followers of Jesus Christ, myself and my family included, are focused on Palm Sunday, heading into Resurrection Sunday. And of course, 15 million Jews around the world, including 8 million Israeli Jews, we are remembering Passover. And we often, during Passover, there's basically 3 different ways to celebrate, right? There's the ultra-Orthodox way, which is many, many hours, lots of reading of the scriptures, lots of commentaries, lots of discussions. It is a long process. There is the regular, normal, traditional way to do a Seder, a Passover ceremony. And then there's the short version, which you can pretty much summarize by saying they enslaved us, they tried to annihilate us, but God saved us, so let's eat. Okay, so never has that been more true than what we're going through right now. But in the midst of all that's happening, the anchor of Fox News Sunday and a wonderful friend, Shannon Bream, has written a fantastic new book, Nothing is Impossible with God. I love this book. I'm about halfway through it. I've read all of her other books, and I couldn't love this one more. 11 heroes, one God, and endless lessons in overcoming. And I think the timing of this book is interesting, not only for what people are going through in the United States and Canada, but also for what we're going through, the darkness that we're going through right here in the Middle East. It's good. It's a good time to focus on the lessons from Moses, from Peter, from Noah, from Jonah, of course, from the life of Jesus. And joining me from Washington is my friend Shannon Bream. Shannon, welcome to the Rosenberg Report. It's so good to see you, and thank you for this book. I absolutely love it.
Thank you, and you too, my friend, and our prayers are with you through this really, really treacherous time.
It is a little bit of a crazy time, and but it puts your book in an interesting relief at the moment. So let's get into it. Look, I want to talk to you about 2 particular biblical heroes that you write about. Obviously Moses, it's Passover week, and obviously the life of Jesus. We may touch on a few others as you want to draw on them, but I want to start with you. Why did you write this particular book?
Yeah, and I think, Joel, gosh, it's such a universal thing, whatever you're facing in your life. And we have a lot of different things. I mean, whether it's a broken family or a scary diagnosis or a lost job or war. I mean, there are things that Ecclesiastes 1 tells us, there's nothing new under the sun. God has seen all of these struggles. Nothing is a surprise to him. And I think by digging through these stories of the past, we can see, first of all, I hope people will get encouragement from these stories that God was working even in the darkest, deepest valleys that we will all walk through at some point. But I want them to be equipped too. So I try to make some practical lessons of this that they can apply in whatever they're walking through. And I do open the book sharing the story that you know about my life and a real physical struggle that I had living with chronic pain for quite a while and going doctor to doctor trying to get diagnosed, finally getting that diagnosis and then hearing the words, "There's no cure for what you have." And just really having to press into God's presence and trust him and, walk in faith. I mean, faith means we do have to step out for things unseen, things we don't know yet, and trust that God has a good plan, even when we cannot see it. And our human minds can only fathom so much. And we can't always know how he's working, but I find such encouragement in each of these stories. And this theme of overcoming is what kind of that thread that holds them all together. So I hope in being transparent and highlighting these amazing heroes from the Bible that people will find encouragement for whatever their current challenges or whatever's coming.
Would you take a little bit more time and talk about, like you said, chronic pain? Okay, that's one way to put it. But you were dealing with an eye condition that was basically ripping your corneas every time you opened your eyes. And you've described it, as you describe in the book, pain was a 10 out of 10 every single time.
Yeah, this absolutely was the worst season of my life and absolutely to my limits, as you said. I mean, because I was living in so much pain and going doctor to doctor, I mean, I was at night having these tears to my cornea, which finally I found the doctor who could diagnose and explain that.
Yeah.
But if you've ever scratched the surface of your eye, you know what that feels like. And by the time I finally got to a diagnosis, the doctor said to me, it's like somebody has been out on a soccer field and playing in the sharpest cleats for the longest time with no one ever repairing the field. And it's just being torn up again and again and again. I mean, the surface of your eyes are a mess. And it's no, mystery why you have so much pain. You're just constantly re-injuring your eye. So I had gotten to the point where I was setting alarms for every 2 or 3 hours, just trying to stay ahead of what I didn't understand, to put drops in my eyes, to make sure that they were lubricated, to do anything I could. And once I got the diagnosis, it finally made sense. But there were many nights, I mean, on the ground, in pain, in my bathroom, just crying out, not an eloquent prayer. God doesn't require that of us. He is listening at any time, and just saying, Lord, please help me. I mean, that would be my prayer, just repeated over and over again. And it was a really, really difficult time. It made me much more empathetic. I would have never chosen it. But when you look around and see, I knew I was just kind of existing. I was surviving at that point, one day at a time, one night at a time. But you think about people around you, whether it's a physical or emotional wound that they've got, and you realize there are people that are walking through life in enormous pain all the time, exhausted, crippled by that. And I'd gotten to the point where before I found this doctor, I was just searching online, which I always tell people don't do. It's not the best way to diagnose yourself, but I was just looking for anyone who might have the same symptoms or explain what this was.
Right.
And I stumbled into message boards and chat rooms where people talked about being turned away from emergency rooms, being told they were crazy. I related to all of that. And then there were those who said, I really just want to end this. I want to end my life. And I thought, that didn't sound crazy to me at all at that point. That's how far down this pit I was in, where I thought, gosh, Lord, just please end this. Please give me peace. Please let me go to sleep and wake up with you. I can't do this in an earthly walk anymore. And it was at that point, that I went and leveled with my husband, Sheldon, who you know very well. And he says hello, by the way. Just because
this was scary for you, it was scary for him.
Understood.
There was nothing he could do for you.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was together we just prayed, Lord, if you're not going to heal me, always remembering the story of Paul in Corinthians when he talks about that thorn in his side, and God said, nope, not going to take it away because my strength is made perfect in your weakness. So you talk about all of those childhood lessons I had and scriptures I knew, and they just come to life when you are living and walking through that. And, Paul goes on to say, okay, therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. And thank the Lord that that's where he led my heart. The Holy Spirit guided me to just rely on him, not be angry, not be, casting him out of my pain, but just asking him to walk me through that. And that's what he's done.
It's Passover, Shannon. Let's talk about Moses. What were some of the impossible obstacles as you sort of re-looked at the life of Moses? You've studied him your whole life, read about him, but what were the things that Moses faced that you sort of more identified and were drawn to, and how did he learn that nothing is impossible with God?
Know his story. He sees a Hebrew slave being mistreated and he ends up killing the Egyptian, then goes on the run himself. He's out in the wilderness for decades until God shows up and says, Moses, I have an assignment for you, that burning bush. Right. And so if you remember, he's got the Hebrew roots, he's got the elite Egyptian education and knowledge of Pharaoh's household and how that would all work. And he's very hesitant, like, I'm not the one to speak for you. I can't do this. And
he's so unwilling that it says that that no matter how much God does to tell him, I'm with you, I'll give you this staff that's miraculous, I'll be with your mouth, that he's so unwilling that it's the text says that God's anger burned at Moses. And then a few verses later, 10 verses later, it looks like God's about to kill him because he's not even circumcising his own son. He's about to rescue the nation of Israel, but he won't even follow the basics of the commandment given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So this is one very resistant man. He's 80 years old, and he's been outcast for 40 years at this point, right? He had the palace life, the royal life of 40, but Now he's in the back. That's why I joke that must be why Moses stuttered, because if for 40 years all he heard was bah, bah, maybe he talked like this too. But this is tremendous resistance, right? I mean, you'd think, and this is the best God had. So keep going, because this, as you unpack this story, it's very fascinating to me, because the impossible seems to get Moses to do it. Not God's like, I'll do the miracles, I'll do the plagues and the part the Red Sea, but you, Moses, you're making it really difficult.
Yeah, and of course he's going to equip us if we are willing and will walk forward. But you're right, the impossible task may have been getting Moses to see that he was capable enough and that God would be with him in this. And so when he says, what am I to tell the people about, that they should suddenly listen to me, this guy who's been out in the desert being a shepherd for all these years, to go back and lead these people, it's where God says to him, I am. That's who's sending you. And right. You go. I'm going to make things right for you with the leaders of Israel, but I'm also going to give you this authority before Pharaoh to actually go and do. And so finally, after all of this arguing and resistance and angering God, Moses moves forward. And if you know his story, he does have to go to the people of Israel and the leaders and convince them, or at least bring the message that God has chosen him to go lead the people out. He has all of this back and forth with Pharaoh, the terrible plagues, the beautiful thing that leads us to the Passover, which was devastating for everybody who was not protected and was not under that protection of the Passover. But what a beautiful tradition that continues to show God's goodness in protecting his people in such a miraculous way.
Okay, so we've just celebrated Palm Sunday. We're approaching Resurrection Sunday. 2.6 billion Christians around the world, including many of us right here in the Holy Land. We're processing that, but we're also we're doing it under tremendous difficulties right now. But that's true of many Christians. Again, different situations, different crises. I'm just curious, for you, when you think of the different impossible or seemingly impossible, excruciating moments in the life of Jesus, not just in this book, but as you've been writing all of these books about what we're discovering, often whether it's women in the Bible or friends in the Bible or romantic relationships in the Bible, or now people facing all kinds of challenges, whether it's the Apostle Peter or Jesus himself. What are some of the lessons that you are most resonating with and that you're finding as you've been doing this book tour, and now at number one, New York Times bestseller right out of the gate, congratulations for that. What are you seeing is resonating with people that people need to hear you share from the scriptures about the life of Jesus?
Well, I think one of the best things about re-examining his life is knowing that, listen, he willingly came to be fully God and fully man at the same time. So he's walked in our path. He's walked our shoes. He's suffered in ways that many of us can't understand. But the great thing is he does understand our suffering. I'm sure that there were times he was hungry. He was frustrated. He had all the source of emotions, the span of emotions that we have. So there's nothing that we're going to face that he doesn't understand. Temptation and struggles in life, he gets that. So coming to walk in our experience so humbly and so graciously and so sacrificially for us, just knowing that he has walked this sod and that he has had every experience, I find so encouraging. And I think a lot of people will think, well, he's God, he could turn things off and on. He could do any of those things. He could have taken himself off the cross. He could have decided not to go to the cross. We see the anguish in him, the very human side of him, really just being tormented and tortured over what he knew was ahead, and yet he did it.
Amen. Would you take us into the Garden of Gethsemane, because that may be the most painful moment in Jesus' life. We saw him weep over the death of his friend Lazarus, and weep over this city that I'm in right now, Jerusalem, and our unwillingness to turn to him. But the Garden of Gethsemane, I think we see him at his most human. He does not want to go to the cross. I'm not sure that most people who haven't spent a lot of time in the Word, and especially people who are not followers of Jesus Christ, or maybe casual followers of Jesus Christ, I'm not sure they realize how much Jesus didn't want to go to the cross, and that's what he's pleading with his Father. Let this cup pass from me. Take us into the garden, would you?
Yeah, I mean, think about his knowing exactly what was coming, the brutal torture, the crucifixion, I mean, I can't imagine any of us knowing something like that was coming and having the option to say, like, okay, I give up, I'm not going to do it, and to not follow through. I think almost 100 out of 100 humans would say, I can't do it, I'm not going to do it,
Yeah.
if you had a choice to walk away from it. But as you said, he said, if it can be to let this cup pass from me, so be it. But not my will,
Mhm.
your will be done. And we're told that his anguish was such that he was sweating drops of blood. I mean, he's completely poured out as a human being at that point, that part of him. He's asked his closest inner circle to be there and watch and pray with him, and they fall asleep over and over again. He can't even rely on his closest circle to be there and support him. He's feeling completely alone and knowing that this will also require him to be separated from the Father. So the anguish in knowing that that's coming, there's the physical, but also that spiritual, absolute brokenness and torment that he will have to go through. He knows all of that is coming, and he's completely grieved and suffering deeply, deeply over all of that. And yet, continues to make the decision to walk forward in it. But it was not something he just, glided to the cross knowing, okay, I know this ends. This is easy. I'm going to walk straight into this. He really, really struggled and anguished and was broken over that, and yet still chose to move forward for us.
All right, I want to ask you one last question because we're running out of time, unfortunately, and that is this. I know you've been here to Israel, but at least at Jerusalem. You were here interviewing the vice president a few years back. And Lynn and I loved having lunch with you at the King David Hotel, and you and your team had, like, I think, a day to kind of poke around. But
Yes.
you haven't really walked where Jesus walked and done all the, where the apostles and the prophets walked. I know you want to talk about why you want to, and I hope that we can still work this out with you and Sheldon. I know maybe not this week. Okay, it's a little tough. Next year, April 7th, 2027, the Joshua Fund and All Israel News will be doing our first ever Epicenter Summit. We're hoping to bring 3,000 evangelicals from all over the world to come and to study and to listen and to worship, and we'll have the tours. But regardless, I would love for you two to come to that. Maybe we can figure that out. But just why have this been sort of a childhood dream to come and walk where Jesus walked?
I mean, it's just such an amazing thing to feel the Holy Spirit, to feel that you're walking all of the stories that you've studied, all of these things to actually be there. And you do, as you walk around the city, you think, did Jesus' did he have his footsteps right here where I'm walking? What about the apostles? Where did this happen or that happen? It's such an amazing thing. I don't like to use the word magical because I don't think of it in that way, but I think that it's a very spiritual thing. And I look forward to the time, yes, that Shell and I can come back and really spend time there, because it just brings things to life in a technicolor way to be able to be there. And there's so much more that I still want to explore. And I know when you lead people with your deep knowledge and biblical knowledge to different places, and to be able to say, okay, this is where this sermon happened or that miracle happened, it's just something that you're never going to experience short of actually being there and walking that very holy ground.
Well, we look forward to welcoming you when that day comes. We pray that we head to peace, right? And security and the victory over our enemies. I believe we're in a tectonic shift here in what's going on in the Middle East, but we are not through this thing yet. I appreciate your prayers for the peace of Jerusalem and the prayers of all of your readers and all of our watchers, viewers. It's a tough season, but nothing is impossible with God. And I could not be more grateful for this book. The timing of it is perfect, at least for those of us here in the Middle East, I think for everybody's life. And Shannon, I want to thank you, not just congratulate you. You've got a lot of success that you've seen in your life, but I think it's important for people to realize that your life has also had some very severe challenges. We only dealt with one, and we only scratched the surface. But you've seen this all play out in your own life. This is not theory to you. You've been tested. You and Sheldon have been tested, and he has been tested in ways that nobody would want to go through. And God is now using you both to teach the Word and encourage. And I want to thank you for that, both personally and on behalf of our TBN viewers.
Well, God bless you. And we will continue to pray for you and Lynn and your boys and their families, and all of those who are there with you in that very sacred spot. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you. Shalom from Jerusalem.